Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another revolving time story. Before we jump in, I want to thank you all for your continued support. And hey, I'm curious, where are you tuning in from today? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing where you guys are listening from. Alright, no more delays. Let's get into today's story. And trust me, this one is a wild ride. Our story today takes place in 2023, right here in Chicago. Now, imagine this, you're living the good life. You've got a steady job, a house, a wife that you thought you could trust, and a life that's moving forward just as you planned. You're not rich, but you're comfortable. Things are solid. That's how it was for me. Anyway, let me introduce myself. I'm John. Just a regular guy, really. I work as a software engineer, making a good living but nothing fancy. My wife, Emily, and I had been together for 8 years. We met in college and everything felt perfect. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in the suburbs, a place that had enough space for us and our dog, Max, who was basically our kid. We'd been saving for years to buy a house, and I was starting to feel like things were finally coming together. But, of course, things never stay perfect for long, do they? And if you're like me, you don't realize something's wrong until it hits you right in the face. It all started when I noticed Emily's behavior shifting. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid. I mean, she was still loving, still caring, but there was something different about her. She'd been spending more and more time on her phone, and I started noticing strange little things. The way she'd laugh at texts, the way she'd put her phone face down when I walked into the room. At first, I told myself I was overthinking things, but then it started getting worse. There were nights she'd go out with friends, sometimes returning later than usual, but always with the same excuse. We lost track of time. That's when I started wondering if I could trust her. Something about those late nights didn't sit right with me, but I didn't act on it right away. I didn't want to seem controlling or worse, paranoid. I trusted Emily. I had to. I thought I knew her better than anyone else. But one evening, after a particularly long day at work, I came home a little earlier than usual. I found Emily sitting on the couch, her phone in her hands, scrolling through something. When she heard me, she quickly locked it and tossed it on the coffee table. Now, I'm no fool. The way she did that, the way her whole demeanor changed when I walked in, it sent alarm bells ringing in my head. I casually asked her, "Everything okay? You seem a little tense tonight." She gave me a tight smile and said, "Yeah, just tired. Long day." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It wasn't just the phone. It was everything, the little things I couldn't ignore anymore. I decided it was time to find out what was really going on. The next day, I decided to take a more direct approach. I'd been hearing rumors from mutual friends that Emily was being a little more secretive than usual. So, after work, I decided to check her phone. I know. Some people will say that's a betrayal of privacy, but at this point, I felt like I had no choice. I needed to know what was going on. I didn't want to be left in the dark, especially when everything I thought I knew was starting to feel like a lie. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. There it was, a text thread between Emily and someone named Mark. My stomach dropped when I read the messages. They were flirtatious, suggestive, and absolutely beyond what any just friends conversation should be. My heart was pounding in my chest. I kept reading, my mind racing with every word. It turned out that Mark wasn't just any friend of Emily's. He was someone she'd met a few months ago. And judging by the way the texts read, their relationship was a lot closer than I had realized. Emily had been lying to me. All those late nights, the strange behavior, it all made sense now. She had been seeing someone else behind my back. I felt sick, betrayed, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew what I had to do. I had to confront her. But how? I wasn't sure yet. But as I sat there, reading those messages again, I realized that I couldn't just let this slide. This wasn't something that could be ignored or swept under the rug. If Emily wasn't going to be honest with me, then I had to take matters into my own hands. The next few days were a blur of emotion and decision-making. I couldn't bring myself to confront her just yet, though. I didn't want to make a rash decision. I needed to think things through to process everything properly. But the thought of her betrayal, the lies she had told, It gnawed at me, deep inside. It was like a weight that wouldn't let up. And that's where things start to really get interesting, folks. As you can tell, this story is far from over. The betrayal is just the beginning, and what happens next will leave you on the edge of your seat. Remember to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and leave a comment below to share your thoughts. What do you think of Emily's actions so far? How would you handle a situation like this? Let's talk about it. Stay tuned for the next part of the story. It's only going to get more intense from here. The days after I found Emily's texts were the longest I'd ever experienced. I was in a constant state of tension, trying to act normal while my mind was consumed with the growing betrayal. I couldn't just confront her immediately, though. As much as I wanted to scream at her, throw the phone in her face, I knew I had to be careful. I couldn't let my emotions dictate my actions. I had to think this through. Every time Emily came home, I put on my best everything is fine face. But inside I was spiraling. Each passing day felt like a countdown. I wasn't sure how much longer I could hold it together, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let this slide. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Emily wasn't the only one who had been hiding something. I started thinking about Mark, the guy she'd been texting. Who was he, really? How long had this affair been going on? And why had I never noticed the signs before? Was I too trusting, too oblivious to the cracks in our relationship? I decided it was time to dig deeper. I needed to know everything. I wasn't going to be kept in the dark any longer. The next weekend, Emily left for a girls' trip with her friends. She'd told me about it a week prior, but there was something about the way she'd said it. The smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, the way she kept looking at her phone. That made me suspicious. I knew she'd be gone for at least 2 days. Perfect. This was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. I spent the entire afternoon digging through every inch of her stuff. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed answers. I found more texts from Mark, even a few photos of them together at a bar. Laughing, smiling, too comfortable. That's when I saw the date. It was just a few weeks ago. Emily had been lying about where she was, and I had been completely blind to it. I felt a surge of anger. It wasn't just the affair that hurt. It was the lies, the complete disregard for our relationship. It was like I had been living in a world she'd been hiding from me, and I was tired of it. But the more I dug, the more I realized this was bigger than just a simple affair. I found emails between Emily and Mark, some of which were discussing trips they were planning together. She was making plans to go away with him, to travel, all behind my back. I was in shock. I had to remind myself to breathe. And then, the most unbelievable part of all, I found bank transfers. Large ones. Emily had been transferring money to Mark. The dates lined up perfectly with the nights she'd claimed to be working late or out with friends. It was all there, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Emily wasn't just cheating on me emotionally. She was investing in this affair. She was helping to fund Mark's life while I was completely oblivious. I felt like a fool. Every moment we'd spent together, every conversation we'd had, every laugh. It all felt like a lie now. I had no idea how long it had been going on. But one thing was clear. My world was crumbling, and I had to do something about it. I couldn't confront her just yet. The shock of everything was still too fresh, and I wasn't ready to face her. But I needed to prepare. I started making calls to my friends, people I trusted, and got advice on what to do next. I had the evidence now, but it was time to think about the bigger picture. In the meantime, I needed to put my plan into motion. If Emily thought I was just going to let this go, she was wrong. I didn't know what her next steps were, but I knew I couldn't just sit back and let her destroy everything. I needed to get control of the situation, regain some of the power that she had taken from me. Then I got a text. It was from Mark. I stared at the message for a long time, unsure whether I should read it. Part of me wanted to just delete it, ignore it, but I couldn't. I opened the message, my fingers trembling. It was a simple text, just a few words. Can't wait to see you this weekend, babe. We'll finally have the whole weekend to ourselves. My stomach churned. This wasn't just an affair. This was a relationship. Emily was planning her life with this guy, and I was just an afterthought. I knew then that it was time to act. I spent the next few days gathering all the evidence I could. Screenshots, receipts, text messages, even the bank statements. I had everything ready to go. But there was still one thing I needed: Emily's confession. I wanted to hear her say it, to hear her admit what she'd done. And I knew exactly how to make that happen. One night, when Emily came home, I decided to confront her. No more avoiding it. No more pretending everything was fine. I was done being in the dark. It was time to shine a light on the truth. I sat her down on the couch, trying to stay calm, but my heart was pounding in my chest. I had to be steady, collected. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing how much she'd hurt me. "Emily," I said, my voice steady but firm, "we need to talk." She immediately looked up, her eyes wide. She knew something was off, but she had no idea how much I knew. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice faltering. "I know everything," I said simply. Her face went pale, and for the first time in a long while, I saw fear in her eyes. She opened her mouth to say something, but I held up my hand. "I've seen the texts, the emails, the bank transfers. I know about Mark. I know about everything," I continued, each word a punch to her gut. Emily's face crumpled. She looked like she wanted to say something, to explain herself, to apologize, but I wasn't going to let her off that easy. "Why, Emily? Why did you do this to me?" I asked, my voice shaking with anger. "What was I to you then?" Her lips trembled as she tried to hold back tears. I don't know," she whispered. "I never meant for it to get this far. I'm sorry, John. I'm so sorry. But Mark, he made me feel alive again. You've been so focused on work, and I felt invisible." I was stunned. "So you thought cheating would make you feel seen?" I asked, the hurt cutting through my words. "How could you throw everything we had away like that?" This is only the beginning of the emotional unraveling. The tension is rising, and things are about to get real messy. Make sure to subscribe and hit that like button if you're enjoying this so far. Leave a comment. I want to hear your thoughts on Emily's confession and what's going to happen next. We're getting closer to the point where everything will come crashing down, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Emily's face twisted with regret, her eyes brimming with tears, but my anger was hardening. It was all too easy for her to cry now. Too late for apologies, too late for regret. "You think saying sorry will make everything go away?" I asked, the words slipping out colder than I intended. "You've destroyed everything we had, Emily. You think sorry fixes that?" She tried to speak, but I raised my hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "You used to be the woman I trusted more than anyone in this world," I continued. "And now I don't even know who you are." The pain in her eyes was obvious, but it didn't soften the rage that was building up inside me. Betrayal is a powerful thing, and the more I saw her sitting there, so helpless, so sorry, the more I realized how deep the damage had gone. This wasn't just about an affair. It was about the lies, the manipulation, and the erosion of everything I thought was real. I stood up abruptly, pacing the room. My mind raced. I couldn't look at her anymore. Not like this. Her apologetic tone was as hollow as the life we'd built together. "I can't believe this," I muttered, running a hand through my hair. "How long did you think you could get away with this? How long did you think I wouldn't notice?" Emily sniffled, wiping her eyes. "John, please, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I love you, but Mark, he was different. He understood me in ways you didn't. That hit me like a slap. She loved me? Felt like an insult. So that's it? You just decided to replace me with him?" I spat, my voice rising. "What happened to us, Emily? To the vows we made?" "I never wanted to hurt you," she said in a broken voice, but the tears did nothing to change my resolve. "I'm sorry. I was selfish." Selfish? The word echoed in my mind. It was more than that. It was betrayal, plain and simple. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. This wasn't just about emotional outbursts anymore. This was about making her see the full extent of what she had done. It wasn't going to be easy, but I had to confront this head-on. "I can't keep pretending everything is fine," I said, my voice low now. You need to understand what you've done, Emily. You've been living a lie, and now I need to face the truth. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed us. As I looked at her, sitting there in silence, something shifted in me. The anger started to burn away, replaced by a strange clarity. It wasn't just about catching her in the act. It was about moving forward, reclaiming my life. It was about taking control of the situation and deciding how to handle it, because one thing was certain. This couldn't go on. I sat back down on the couch, taking a moment to collect my thoughts. Emily looked up at me, waiting for me to say something. I've been thinking about this. I started, my tone calmer but firm. I'm done with the lies. I'm done with the secrecy. You've made your choices, and now I'm making mine. I could see the panic rising in her eyes. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. No, don't try to apologize anymore. I'm not going to make the same mistake again. I paused for a moment, letting the weight of the situation sink in. I'm leaving, Emily. Her face paled, and I could see the panic set in. John, no. Please don't leave. We can work this out. I can fix this. But I had already made up my mind. No, you can't. You had your chance, I replied. And you chose him over me. For a moment there was silence. The air between us felt thick with tension. Emily looked like she was about to break down, but I couldn't let myself feel sorry for her. Couldn't. I stood up and walked to the front door. I'm taking Max. I'll be back for the rest of my things later. John. Emily's voice was small now, almost pleading. I turned to face her one last time. I hope you understand what you've done, but this is the end for us. I'm done. With that, I walked out of the apartment, leaving Emily behind. The street outside was quiet, and the weight of everything that had just happened settled on my shoulders. I had just lost everything I thought I knew, but there was no turning back now. I didn't know where I was going at first. I just needed to get away. So I drove, not caring about the destination, just needing the freedom of the open road. The world felt different now, like the air had shifted, and I was finally seeing everything for what it was. It took me a few hours to calm down, but eventually, I pulled into a parking lot near the lake. I sat there for a while, staring at the water, trying to process everything that had happened. It felt surreal, like I was living in a nightmare. But then, I started thinking about what I needed to do next. This wasn't just about Emily. This was about me too. About regaining control of my life. About figuring out who I was again, outside of this marriage. And that was what I had to focus on now. I took a deep breath and grabbed my phone. It was time to start planning my next steps. The anger had started to subside, but the reality of what Emily had done hit me in waves. I couldn't go back, not to the way things were. She had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I spent the next few days organizing everything. I filed for divorce, contacted my lawyer, and started the process of getting everything in order. But even as I worked through the details, a part of me wondered about Mark. Who was he? What was his endgame? Was he really just using Emily, or was he playing a larger game that I hadn't even seen yet? I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread about him. The idea that Emily had chosen him over me, and that she was so comfortable with the deceit, made my blood boil. But that's when I realized something important. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. This was about taking back what was mine. This is where things really start to get intense. The game has changed, and now it's time for me to take control. Stay tuned for what's coming next. You're not going to want to miss it. And if you're enjoying this so far, be sure to hit that like button, share the story with your friends, and leave a comment. What do you think I should do next? How would you handle a situation like this? Let's hear your thoughts. It had been a few days since I left Emily's place, but the weight of what had happened still lingered. I tried to keep my head clear, focus on the next steps. But it wasn't easy. The divorce papers had been filed, and I had already started making plans to move forward. But something kept eating at me, the fact that Emily hadn't come clean yet. She had apologized, sure, but there was no real acknowledgement of what she had done. She hadn't fully come clean, and that was what bothered me the most. That's when I started thinking about the one thing I hadn't done yet. Talking to Mark. I didn't know why I hadn't done it earlier, but I knew I needed to. He wasn't just some side guy. He was the one who'd been playing this game with her. And I had no idea how deep it went. Maybe he had his own plans for Emily, maybe this was all part of some sick scheme, or maybe he was just another guy looking for an easy target. Either way, I couldn't just let him slip through the cracks. Took me a few tries to get his number. Emily had made it clear she didn't want me talking to him, but I was past caring about what she wanted. I knew he was involved in this mess, so I wasn't going to leave him out of the equation. Finally, after some digging and a few clever conversations, I found his number and texted him, "We need to talk. Meet me at the park tomorrow at noon." I had no idea what to expect, but I knew I wasn't going to let him get away with whatever game he was playing. I wasn't going to let him hide behind Emily's lies. He was going to face the truth too. The next day, I showed up at the park. My nerves were frayed, but my mind was made up. I knew I had to confront him, to hear him out, to understand what the hell was going on. I wasn't sure what I expected from the conversation, but I knew it was a crucial step in figuring this all out. It wasn't long before he showed up, looking far too comfortable. Mark was exactly what I imagined, cocky, well put together, confident. But I could see the subtle signs of discomfort as soon as he saw me. Maybe he thought I was just some clueless husband who wouldn't catch on. Well, he was wrong. "John." He greeted me with a false smile, extending his hand. "What's this about?" I shook his hand, though it felt like I was holding onto a snake. "We need to talk about you and Emily." His eyes flashed briefly, but he recovered quickly. "What about her?" I didn't waste any time. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been with my wife, behind my back, for God knows how long." Mark's face went pale, but he quickly masked it with a laugh. "Man, come on. You're overreacting. It was just a fling. All right? Nothing serious." I didn't flinch at his casual dismissal. "A fling? You've been planning trips with her, making plans for the future. It's a lot more than a fling, don't you think?" Mark hesitated for a moment. His cool exterior was starting to crack. "Look, I don't know what you think you know, but Emily, don't give me that." I cut him off. "I saw the bank transfers, the emails, the hotel receipts. You've been living off my wife, using her to fund your little life. Don't act like this is just a casual thing. It's not. You knew what you were doing, and now you're going to pay for it." Mark took a step back, clearly rattled now. "You don't understand. Emily and I—" "Stop." I stepped forward, cutting him off again. "You don't get to turn this around. You don't get to blame her. You knew what you were doing. You used her." Mark's face hardened, and for the first time, I saw the real side of him. He wasn't some charming guy trying to weasel his way out of this. He was angry now, but it was too late for him to be angry. "Fine," he spat. "You want to be the martyr, go ahead. You think you can just walk in and fix everything? You think Emily's going to come back to you just because you say so?" I felt a surge of anger but forced myself to stay calm. "This isn't about winning her back. It's about taking responsibility for what you did. And trust me, Mark, I'm not going to let you get away with it. I've got enough evidence to bury both of you. So you're going to either step aside or face the consequences." His jaw clenched. "You're going to regret this. Maybe, but not as much as you will." I shot back. "You'll see. This is just the beginning." As I watched him walk away, I felt a strange mix of relief and determination. The conversation had gone as I expected, but something in me shifted. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was about standing up for myself, standing up for my dignity, and making sure they both paid for what they had done. They thought they could tear my life apart, but I wasn't going down without a fight. That night, as I sat at home, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. The whirlwind of emotions, the lies, the hurt. It all felt so surreal. But through all of it, one thing became clear. I had to take control of the situation. Emily had made her choices. Mark had made his. And now it was my turn to decide how I would move forward. I wasn't going to sit back and let them destroy me. I was going to make sure the truth came out no matter how long it took. This is just getting started, and the stakes are rising fast. Stay tuned, because things are about to take a dramatic turn. If you're enjoying the story, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. The tension was suffocating. After my confrontation with Mark, things had started to feel like they were spiraling. Emily's words haunted me, the lies she had told, the promises that meant nothing anymore. And Mark? He didn't just walk away from the park. He had left me with a bitter taste of unfinished business. I knew I couldn't just let it go. I had to figure out how far this whole thing had gone, how much of it was his manipulation, and how much was hers. It was time to get serious. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. It was about exposing the truth, about taking back the control they had stolen from me. The next morning, I woke up to a flurry of emotions. I couldn't sleep much after the night before. Something inside me snapped. I couldn't keep feeling sorry for myself. Emily had betrayed me, Mark had crossed a line, and now I had to set things right, for myself and for what I had built. The truth was out there, and I wasn't going to rest until I knew every detail. I didn't waste any time. I picked up the phone and dialed the one person who could help me find the answers I needed. My old friend, Tom. Tom wasn't just a lawyer, he was someone I could trust. We had been through everything together, from legal battles to business deals. And right now I needed him more than ever. When Tom answered, I didn't waste any time on small talk. Tom, I need your help. I need you to get into Mark's accounts, find out everything you can. I need to know exactly how deep this goes. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear the gears turning in his head. Are you sure about this? I mean, this is going to be... I don't care. I need answers. I need to know what they've been doing. If I'm going to take action, I need everything laid out for me. Tom hesitated again, but then finally agreed. All right, I'll start digging. Give me a day. I'll have something for you by tomorrow. The day passed slowly as I waited for Tom's update. My mind was racing with all the possibilities, all the what-ifs. But no matter what, I knew one thing. This was about to get bigger than I ever imagined. And then, around 10 p.m., the call came. John. Tom's voice was serious. I've got something. My heart skipped a beat. What did you find? The transactions. They're massive. Mark's been siphoning money from your accounts. He's been running this for months. But it's not just that. Emily's been involved too. They've been transferring money into offshore accounts, creating fake businesses. And there's more. They've been planning something big. Planning what? I demanded. Emily. She's been talking to your business rivals. I think she's been trying to leverage this situation to take you down. My stomach dropped. It was worse than I thought. She wasn't just having an affair. She was plotting against me, using everything I had worked for to tear me down. My own wife had betrayed me on a level I hadn't even considered. I sat back, my mind reeling. This was the moment. The information I needed was right in front of me. This was the betrayal, the manipulation that I had to expose. But how could I do it? How could I turn this all around? I needed to confront Emily. But not yet. I needed leverage. I needed to show her just how much I knew, how deep her lies ran. The confrontation had to be on my terms, not hers. The next morning, I called a private investigator. I couldn't leave anything to chance. I needed to know everything. Where Emily had been, who she had been meeting, how far this conspiracy stretched. The investigator assured me that it would take a few days to get everything, but I was willing to wait. I had no choice. As the days passed, I kept to myself, keeping the information I had discovered close to my chest. I wasn't going to give Emily the satisfaction of seeing me sweat. No, I was playing this one carefully. And all the while, Mark's presence loomed like a shadow. I had to finish this. I had to make sure everything came to light before they could ruin me any further. Then, out of nowhere, Emily showed up at my door. John, she said, standing in the doorway. We need to talk. I could feel my blood boil. The audacity. After everything, after all the lies, she still thought she had the right to come into my life like this. But I kept my voice steady. We've talked enough, Emily. You don't get to just walk back into my life. Not after what you've done. She stepped forward, looking at me with those pleading eyes. John, I know you're angry. I know I've made mistakes. But I'm sorry. I've always loved you. You have to believe me. I shook my head. No, I don't believe you. You don't get to just say sorry and think that fixes everything. You've been planning this with Mark. You've been sabotaging me. You've been using my trust to destroy everything I've worked for. Her face went white. I saw it. The panic in her eyes. She knew I was onto her. But instead of backing down, she stood her ground. You don't understand. I did it because I thought I needed more. I wanted to feel powerful again. I wanted to feel in control. That's your excuse? I said, my voice rising. You threw everything away for a false sense of control? You ruined us? Ruined everything. Because you were bored. Emily's eyes were filled with tears now, but they didn't move me. Not anymore. I'm sorry, John. Please, don't do this. I took a deep breath, looking at her, feeling nothing but contempt. It's too late for sorry. I've seen everything, and I'm going to make sure you pay for what you've done. At that moment, something shifted inside me. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal. It all crystallized into something solid. I wasn't just going to sit back and let her walk away unscathed. I was going to make sure that she paid for everything. This was no longer about saving my marriage. This was about exposing her for what she was. The tension between us had reached its peak. And as I watched Emily's face twist in desperation, I realized just how much I had changed. I had gone from the man who trusted, the man who loved, to someone who would make sure she faced the consequences of her actions. I was done being the victim. I don't know what happened next. It was like everything clicked. The feeling of betrayal faded away, replaced by cold determination. I wasn't going to let this be the end of my story. It was time to flip the script. All right, now you're caught up. The stakes are higher than ever, and the tension's building fast. You won't want to miss what's coming next. If you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like, share, and comment your thoughts down below. What do you think I should do next? How would you handle a betrayal like this? Let me know. The days following my confrontation with Emily were a blur, but one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. She thought she could apologize her way back into my life, but I knew better. The damage was done, and she wasn't going to just walk away unscathed. As I waited for the private investigator's full report on Mark and Emily's activities, I couldn't help but reflect on the choices that had led us here. How had we gotten so far off track? Everything seemed so perfect at the beginning. My life, my family, my business. But that was before betrayal crept in like a slow poison, infecting everything. Now, with all the pieces falling into place, I had to decide how to handle the fallout. I couldn't just confront Emily again, not without being sure that I had all the facts. She needed to understand the full extent of the consequences, and so did Mark. It was around 4 p.m. the next day when the investigator's call came through. I took a deep breath before picking up. John, we've got it. Tom's voice came through the line. The transactions, the communications, everything. You're not going to believe what we've uncovered. What did you find? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though inside, my pulse was racing. Emily and Mark were deeper in this than you thought. They weren't just playing games. They were working together to undermine you. They've been making plans for the future, making moves behind your back, taking money, creating false records. And the worst part? Emily's been meeting with your competitors. She's been using the affair as leverage to get inside information. This goes beyond just an affair. This was a full-scale betrayal. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Emily wasn't just cheating on me. She was plotting against me, using our marriage as a tool for power. She had betrayed me in every possible way. The anger that welled up in my chest was almost overwhelming, but I channeled it into focus. How much money are we talking? I asked. A lot. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in transfers to offshore accounts. There are also payments that go to shell companies linked to your rivals. It's massive, John. I've got all the evidence. You've got everything you need to expose them. The pieces were finally falling into place. The betrayal was larger than I'd imagined, and it was more calculated than I could have ever thought. This wasn't just about a cheating wife anymore. This was about a complete collapse of trust, a coordinated attack on everything I had worked so hard to build. That night, I sat in front of my computer, staring at the files Tom had sent me. I was beyond angry. I was consumed by the need for justice. This was no longer just about Emily and Mark. This was about sending a message. I couldn't let them think they could just destroy my life and get away with it. Not after everything we had built together. As I reviewed the documents, I noticed something strange. There were irregularities in the way Emily had been transferring money. Patterns that didn't match the story she had told me about her financial habits. She had been carefully crafting a plan to secure her future, regardless of the damage she caused. The further I dug, the clearer it became. I had been the fool, letting her hide behind her charm and her sweet words for so long. Now I had to make sure she paid for this, for the lies, the betrayal, and the damage to our family. The following week, I set up a meeting with my lawyer, Tom, and a few trusted friends. I needed to be prepared for what was about to happen. I couldn't leave anything to chance. Emily had no idea what was coming. She thought she could continue living in her bubble of lies, but it was about to burst. The first step was to confront her with the truth, with everything I knew, and let her understand the full gravity of her actions. The day of the confrontation came faster than I expected. Emily agreed to meet at a coffee shop near our home, and I arrived early to collect my thoughts. I wasn't nervous. I was resolute. I wasn't going to let her talk her way out of this. I had the evidence. I had the power. When Emily walked in, she gave me a hesitant smile, the one she had always used to soften me. But this time it didn't work. I stood up and gestured to the seat across from me. "Sit down, Emily. We need to talk." Her smile faltered. She sat down slowly, unsure of what was about to happen. "John, I know things have been hard between us, but I'm sorry. I want to fix things." I didn't let her finish. "You think a sorry is enough after everything you've done? After everything you've been hiding from me?" Her face tightened. "John, please. I've told you I made a mistake, but we can still fix this." "No," I said, my voice cold. "You've made a series of mistakes, and this is where it ends. You can't talk your way out of this. You've been using me, using our marriage to gain power, to undermine everything I've worked for." She froze, her face pale. "What are you talking about?" "I have all the proof," I said, leaning forward. "The money you've been transferring, the offshore accounts, the meetings with my competitors. You've been planning behind my back, using everything you could to get ahead. You betrayed me on every level, Emily." I watched as the realization hit her. For the first time, she looked afraid. Her mouth opened and closed as she tried to form words, but there was nothing left to say. "This is over," I continued. "I'm going to make sure you pay for what you've done. You don't get to walk away from this." The confrontation with Emily was just the beginning. Now that she knew I had everything, it was time to make my next move. It was time for Mark to face the consequences as well. He had thought he could get away with this, using my wife to bring me down, but he was wrong. I wasn't finished yet. Now that you're all caught up, the plot is thickening, and things are getting intense. Stay tuned because the truth is about to come crashing down. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe if you're enjoying the story. What do you think will happen next? How would you handle a betrayal like this? Let me know in the comments. As the dust settled after that intense confrontation, I couldn't help but reflect on the choices I had made. I had been pushed to the edge, tested in ways I never imagined, and yet here I was, standing stronger, more resolute than ever before. But as much as it felt like a victory, there was still a long road ahead. The real battle had only just begun. Emily had tried every trick in the book, from the tearful apologies to the "I love yous" she had thrown at me. But nothing could change the reality of what she had done. The money laundering, the offshore accounts, the manipulative actions, it all pointed to a calculated betrayal. But what struck me the most wasn't the affair. It was the way she had woven herself into the web of deception, making herself a central part of the conspiracy to tear me down. I was done playing the victim. Now it was time for her to pay for everything. Over the next week, I worked with my lawyer, Tom, to prepare for the final confrontation with Mark. The evidence had been collected, the details laid out. There was no room for denial. I had the truth on my side, and I wasn't afraid to use it. But I wasn't going to just fire back with accusations. I wanted Mark to feel every ounce of the weight of what he had done, to understand the depth of his involvement in tearing apart everything that I had worked so hard to build. I arranged a meeting with him at my office. The setting was perfect, neutral ground. No emotional distractions, just the raw reality of the situation. When Mark arrived, he was just as smug as always, his usual cocky attitude in full swing. But this time, something was different. He could feel it in the air. It wasn't just me he had to worry about. "John, I think we need to talk," Mark started, offering a handshake that I didn't take. I wasn't here to be friendly. I wasn't here to make amends. I was here for justice. "You're right, Mark. We do need to talk," I replied, sitting down and leaning forward. "About everything you've been doing behind my back." His face faltered for just a split second, but it was enough for me to see the crack in his armor. He wasn't as confident as he thought he was. I pulled out the documents, the bank statements, the records, the messages between him and Emily. Everything was there in black and white. "Tell me," I began, my voice cold. "How long were you planning on doing this, Mark? Using my wife, using our business to get ahead? You've been siphoning money, laundering funds, and now you've been trying to sabotage my company. And for what? To get a piece of the pie." Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "John, I never meant for it to go this far. Spare me the excuses. I have everything I need to bring you down. You're finished." I let that sink in. He didn't say anything after that. Instead, he just sat there, his face pale, his arrogance slipping away as the truth closed in on him. The next few days were a whirlwind. I filed the necessary paperwork, presented the evidence to the authorities, and made sure Emily and Mark were both fully aware of the consequences they would face. I wasn't playing games anymore. This wasn't just about exposing their infidelity or their lies. This was about making sure that they couldn't destroy everything I had worked for. Mark was arrested within 48 hours, his scheme unraveled in front of the world. Emily, on the other hand, tried to play the victim, but the evidence was too overwhelming. Her attempts to backtrack and shift blame were met with nothing but cold facts and undeniable proof. The public fallout was fast and unforgiving. The media had a field day with the scandal, but what shocked me the most was the way Emily reacted. She tried to hold onto her reputation, tried to cling to the life she had built, but it wasn't enough. People saw her for who she really was, not the woman she had pretended to be for so long. As the dust settled, I looked at the pieces of my life, the wreckage left behind, and realized that I had changed. I had been forced to confront some ugly truths about myself, my marriage, and the people I had trusted. But in doing so, I had also learned something crucial. I wasn't defined by the betrayal. I was defined by how I chose to respond to it. I had been betrayed, yes, but I had also fought back. And in doing so, I had found my strength. The man I had been was gone, but the man I had become was someone who wouldn't just let life happen to him. I would take control, rebuild, and move forward. A few months later, I was sitting in my office, looking out over the city. My company was thriving once again. It wasn't just the recovery from the scandal that gave me pride. It was the knowledge that I had stood my ground and made sure those responsible for trying to tear me down faced justice. Tom, my lawyer, entered the office with a smile. "It's over, John." Mark's looking at a long sentence. "Emily, well, she's not going to be able to run her businesses anytime soon. She's already lost everything. The press has made sure of that." "I never wanted it to come to this," I said, more to myself than to Tom. "But sometimes you don't have a choice." "No," he agreed. "You did what needed to be done. You fought for your life, your business, and your dignity. That's not something a lot of people could have done." I nodded, but deep down, I knew this wasn't the end of my journey. It was just the beginning of something new, something stronger. It wasn't long before I met someone new. It wasn't about replacing what I had lost. It was about finding something real, something honest. She didn't come with baggage or secrets. And over time, we built something solid, something based on trust and respect. It was a relationship that was about growth, not manipulation. And as for Emily, she faded from the spotlight. She lost everything, including her reputation. Her actions had caught up with her in ways she could never have predicted. She tried to play the victim, but no one was buying it anymore. As for Mark, well, he had his day in court, and his sentence would serve as a reminder to anyone who thought they could get away with betraying those who trusted them. In the end, I had learned a valuable lesson. The hardest betrayals often lead to the strongest transformations. I had come out of this stronger, more focused, and with a clearer understanding of what really mattered. I was no longer the man who had been deceived. I was the man who had reclaimed his life, rebuilt his business, and moved forward with a new sense of purpose. If you've enjoyed this journey with me, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more stories like this. You never know when the next plot twist will hit, and trust me, there's always more to come. Thanks for sticking with me through this crazy ride, and I'll see you in the next video.